Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Do me a favor, guys. Smash the granny if you enjoy the content that you are about to see. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. We're on the march to 35K, I hope, by the time this video gets out. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. We've got a couple more transfer news, views, and clues for you regarding some defensive options, some interesting updates with regards Christian Romero, who is no longer just a target for Atletico Madrid. He is now, as of the last couple of days, also a target for Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid. And that would be interesting. It'll be really interesting if a little bidding, not bidding more, but a way that you can play each other, play sort of both clubs against each other. Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone has, of course, come out and said in the last in the last couple of weeks, via the reports that we've seen, that he's essentially, doing everything he can to prize Romero away from Tottenham, apart from paying the money. And according to other reports, he has 200 million euros in his sort of cash account that he wants to spend and drop, but he doesn't want to spend it all on Tottenham because he thinks of the Premier League and clubs like Tottenham as lesser sized fish in a certain sized pond, and that he can just tap players up, call them every day and say, do everything you need to do, engineer a move, use the mechanics of desettlement. All of those types of shenanigans are definitely afoot with regards Atletico Madrid's pursuit of Christian Romero. It's clear that I think that Christian Romero would be happy to leave if a right price came along. At the same time, I think he's fairly comfortable at Tottenham right now and fairly happy at Tottenham. I think he also mentioned in the past that his family aren't necessarily happy with the weather. And so I think that a move is probably coming. However, of course, it is Saturday and it's 10 to 4 at the time of recording in the afternoon. And look, the players, most of them are starting to drip back into pre-season training. Yesterday, some of them are back. Today, a lot more are back. Monday, most of them will be back. There'll be a few players that will still be on international duty. And certainly the younger guys that have been on the under-21 or under-19 tournaments, etc., they won't be back for a little while yet. But it's important to remember that whilst everyone is losing their head regarding a very poor transfer window so far, there's not been that much time for a new manager to come in, take a look. We've been seeing so much. There was even almost a meme created about it on Twitter that the manager wants to come in, and rightly so, and have a little look-see before he decides on whether or not he needs to see players gone or otherwise. He also probably has to meet a certain couple of players to figure out what their intentions are, whether he wants them, whether they want us still, like in the likes of Christian Romero and in the likes of Heung Min. Heung Min, for what it's worth, guys, has come out and essentially said in the last couple of days through reports that he wants to stay at Tottenham, that the reports linking Tottenham to LAFC are wide of the mark. He's not really interested in going to Saudi. He's not really interested in going to Turkey, and that he wants to have one last crack at the Champions League, which, as I say, I'd love to get your thoughts on it in the comment section. First story out of the trap here. What is your thoughts on this particular notion that Sonny is to hold delicate talks with Son after major exit news? This is coming from Tottenham Hotspur News.com, but obviously they are just an aggregator of other people. The South Korean has spent the last couple of seasons at Spurs looking like a shadow of the player he once was. Long gone are the days when he would blitz past defenders on the wing with no more than a second glance. And Spurs supporters have now received an update on Son's future. He's decided to remain at Tottenham. Son have been linked to several clubs this summer, including Fenerbahce, where the Tottenham star could reunite with Jose Mourinho. He's also been linked with LA Galaxy and obviously Saudi as well. Now, John Wenham has said, I think keeping Son has positives and negatives. He has a lot of experience. I think he can still contribute. However, he has been willing to accept that he's no longer going to be guaranteed the starting place like he once was. Tottenham has signed Matisse Tell. They've got Micky Moore coming through. If we keep Romero, I think he needs to be captain. Therefore, some delicate conversations need to be had with Son. However, I still think he's a phenomenal player who can have a massive impact off the bench in games. Here's what I would say about that one. First and foremost, I think it's worth saying, look, there's absolutely truth to the fact that he's on the decline. We all know that. And I think that there's also truth to the idea that if there is any legitimacy to this notion that Sonny is part of the wiggle room in which Tottenham can manufacture transfer fees to be able to put them into, a rebuild, essentially going after some younger players and some more, established players in the Premier League level criteria, but at younger ages, like a Mohamed Kudus, then according to people like Matt Law in the past, of which I don't particularly agree with him, then Tottenham needs to sell before they can buy. If Sonny has decided to stay, then I think that creates as many problems as it does solutions. I think it'd be nice for some of the fans to think that he gets one more crack and that we're loyal to the guy. I've seen people in relatively high positions in journalism saying we need to kind of let Sonny decide his future. If he wants to go, if he wants to say, it's up to him. And of course, ultimately, it is up to him, right? He is not someone that has to leave. He's got 1 year left on his contract. And I think that there's a lot of examples right now around sort of football in the Premier League and elsewhere of players that are running down their contract with a move to getting a juicier fee as a free transfer later on. Whether you can look at the likes of Casemiro at Manchester United, who is on massive wages. Manchester United would love to move him on, but he's not going anywhere. Jadon Sancho, another player that is probably having conversations with teams in Italy, like we know that he is, or even maybe in Turkey as well. But ultimately, the teams that that are interested in him, like Juventus and Napoli, for example, well, they're saying, look, we're not going to be able to afford the salary and the fee, so we'll take you on loan for a year, run down that last year of your contract, and then we can figure that stuff out in the future. Jonathan David did the same thing for Lille last year. I think there's also maybe suggestions that Mark Gahey might be doing the same sort of thing. How about Ibrahim Konate? It doesn't seem to matter the size of the club or the size of the player. There's lots and lots of players out there right now that have 1 year left on their contract that know that in 12 months' time, if they're of a certain age or if they're of a certain disposition, then they can move on to somewhere else and get a lovely, nice signing fee alongside supremely amplified and expedited wage structures that will suit them out for the tail end of their career. I wonder if the same thing is being thought of in Sonny's camp, even though I'm not suggesting for a second that he cares about money, and that maybe there is probably truth to the idea that he is staying at Tottenham because he wants one last crack at the Champions League, but really, what sort of crack? He's not a solo player here. He has to participate in a team that really isn't set up to win the Champions League. Let's be entirely frank. What about Bissouma? Bissouma, there's rumours out that he might be looking to be going to Juventus. There's rumours that he might be of interest to Fenerbahce as well. Fenerbahce at the same time looking at Thomas Partey. We know what has transpired in the last 24 hours regarding him. So maybe that's going to be difficult to pursue. So maybe there's some stories out there regarding some of our players. And look, before Tottenham can bring players in, if Tottenham want to make room to bring players in, they also have to consider at some point exits to other players. And if we are looking at certain players like Sonny and like Bissouma as the likely candidates to leave, then we have to bake into our frustrations, of which there are many at Tottenham, at least in the fan base, with regards to our slow start to the window, around why that might be. If Bissouma is thinking about running his contract down, like the aforementioned people elsewhere, if Sonny's thinking of the same thing, then we're sort of cop-blocking ourselves, similar to how Manchester United did over the last 2 or 3 years. That's finally the chickens of which are coming home to roost in regards their inability to move players on. For them, mostly because of high salaries, but also contracts that are up for expiration in a year's time equals the value and the leverage and the power is in the hands of the players. The players' power is always prominent, by the way. For a transfer to happen, a player has to be willing to go, and that's not always as easy as you'd like to see. But Sonny, for sure, is a situation that's a sort of developing story here. If he really wants to stay, then that makes it a little bit more difficult for Tottenham to be able to go and get a Kudus and also somebody else. It also means that if he's not leaving, does that mean that there's no space for Micky Moore? Is he going to go on loan to West Brom? What about Manor Solomon? Thomas Frank has apparently said that he wants to bring Manor Solomon back in to check him out before he makes a decision. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it. Unfortunately, we've already got too many wingers. I think we're down to about 9 or 8 in the ready list right now. And if we want to bring in a Kudus, we go back up. We have a problem. We have to get rid of 2 or 3 of them, excuse me, to make space. So watch this space with Sonny. If he's really leaving, if he's really staying, or saying that he wants to stay and have one more crack, I would say that's a problem for Tottenham's ambitions in the summer transfer market. Whatever you feel about Daniel Levy and the ownership of Vinay, whether they really mean it when they say that they want to crack on with the Champions League title winning ambitions and the Premier League title winning ambitions over the next 2 or 3 years, well, there's more than just one party that's responsible for those things manifesting. And then when it comes to players, they have absolutely every right to have a say in that conversation. What I would say lastly about Sonny, guys, is that he is a different entity potentially if being repositioned into an inside forward role. As a winger, the fact that the article said this earlier, as a winger, I don't think he has the take on speciality anymore. He hasn't got the kind of the minerals, if you like, to pardon or to, for want of a better phrase, to be able to take on players like he did in the take on specialist role. I think you do need players in your squad that can do that. In Mohamed Kudus, you certainly have that, one of the best take on specialists in the Premier League. In regards of someone like Manor Solomon, you actually have someone who's a take on specialist. I'm not necessarily so sure about the output on the other side of that, but in terms of, and the same thing can be said for someone like a Wilson Odobert and possibly a Matisse Tell, although he hasn't proven it at the Premier League level just yet. But I think you do have people within our kind of current squad that are take on specialists that can still play a winger role when required. But if you think really about what Thomas Frank is going to be looking for out of a front three system, either in a back four or a back five with wing backs, then you're probably looking for more narrow ends of the curve with regards forwards. And so maybe there's an argument, to be entirely honest, to be saying that both Matisse Tell and certainly Sonny are going to benefit more if they are used sporadically and in certain situations, in certain scenarios where you're going to see them play as an inside forward, maybe as part of a front two, where they can rely on the kind of work rate and the effort of other people in the squad, especially in a back five system, by the way, where the wing backs are taking care of the width and taking care of that sort of acceleration and that speed and all of the kind of effort in that regard. Maybe you might just see Sonny be able to play sort of 50% fewer minutes than he was last season and still be able to contribute to the kind of unbelievable finish that he has. And maybe that will be accelerated and amplified in a method and a market whereby we don't need him to be doing the things that he was asked to do under an Ange Postecoglou system that, let's be honest, was exhausting for so many of our squad. So as much as I've seen a massive decline in Sonny over the last 12, 24 months, and as much as I would absolutely encourage him to sunset his own career at Tottenham, because I don't think it's going to get any better than it currently finishes. And I do worry about his own legacy as a legend that he is being slightly tarnished if it starts to his performances start to decline. I would sort of throw out the curveball here and say, when you think about the logistics of him in a Thomas Frank system and the requirements in specific roles at specific times in that specific system, and the fact that he has the experience of Champions League, which can't be said for most people in our squad, then in a world where he has decided that he wants to stay, it's not necessarily curtains. It's not necessarily horrendous news. It could actually be spun, if you wanted to think of it in a positive light, it could actually be spun into a very specific, nuanced version of value that I'm not necessarily horrendously against. It's just that if he does stay, then we have to be absolutely determined and vehement on the outgoings of people like Manor Solomon. We have to also say, possibly goodbye to one of maybe a loan deal for Wilson Odobert and or Brennan Johnson. We have to find a little bit of room if we still want to bring in Mohamed Kudus and we still have intentions to go and get a Mikhail Tadzi, or as of the last video, as I say, an Evan Gassand. If you want to see the back of Richalison and you bring in somebody else in the forward line, all of those things can't all be true at the same time, especially so if Sonny stays. I was going to talk about Kony de Winter, guys, and I was going to talk about another player as well, which is Aratata, if it's true. I'm going to bring this out on a third video, which is going to be coming shortly. So, as I said to you on the last video, guys, Tottenham's news, views, and clues with regards to Spurs Talk Show is going to be coming thick and fast. I'm going to be doing shorter videos, more of them. And so make sure you smash a like, smash a subscribe, smash the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on this kind of twist, I guess, in the Sonny story. And I'll get back onto Kony de Winter and the other fella in a video that's coming out in a couple of hours' time. Like, subscribe, and comment, guys. And as always, bye-bye.